You are listening to the Short Convos podcast.
Boom.
Boom. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Short Convos podcast. I'm JC Warrior of Light Cashman.
And as Mirror Light, available to listen on Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
Should we pick up where we left off last time, or is it going to drop like a fart in whatever the saying is? We were talking some science, weren't we, last time? We were talking some light travel and calculators. What have you researched?
What would you like to start with, the calculator or the light?
What came first? The chicken or right. Let's calculate first. Let's calculate because it's been bothering me since. So let's calculate.
So the word we were lacking last week, or that wasn't coming to mind, although I think you actually said zeros and ones, is binary. So binary is actually a language of zeros and ones, and it's the language that science uses when it comes to electronics because it can be converted into on and off. So the idea in the microchip of calculators, and basically in all microchip computers, is there's little transistors, electronic transistors, and some are switching on and some are switching off. So anything that you input into it is converted into binary form, zeros and ones. The calculation is worked out in that format by flicking and flicking off of transistors based upon principles in maths that we understand and know. That's kind of what's programmed into the calculator. And then it spits it back out in the 10 number system that we know, as in 0 to 10, upwards of that.
Yeah.
So that's the basic functionality of how a calculator works. And
is that
that's
11
effectively numbers? Oh, see, now I don't think 0 counts as a number. Okay. That's another question for another day. I don't think 0 is.
There's no weight to it. It is nothingness.
I think it's a thing in itself, separate from mass and counting and all of that business. So that's your calculator.
So in short, that little chip, because we got down to it being the chip, didn't we? So
yes.
In short, that chip is just full of loads of switches, in short.
Basically, yeah. Small electronic switches going yes, no, or on, off, or 1, 0.
Predetermined that if a bit of electric comes in or whatever the current is, it makes them all switch a certain way, and it's all predetermined to...
Effectively, yeah. Like the one button has a certain 0100001 when you press 1. If you press the plus, it's a certain sequence of 01000001, whatever it is. And then all of that in sequence will spit out a sequence, which then gets converted back to a number that we understand.
Yeah. I get that. Right, light travel. Take us to
light travel. So again, the thing we were missing, what I was trying to get to last week, is when we discuss the speed of light, we're talking about what's called a physical constant. So the speed of light, when we discuss it, is being discussed in a vacuum. The reason we discuss it in a vacuum is because that's like a control. It's something, it takes out a lot of the variables in terms of it traveling, because light, if we put light through, let's say, a bowl of jelly, it's going to travel a lot slower than if it traveled through absolutely nothing. So when we discuss the speed of light, we're talking about it in a vacuum. And that speed, which is in science, if you're... that's a brand. It's written as C in mathematics, so that's denoted for it, and it's 299792458 meters per second, or approximately 300,000 kilometers per second, if kind of we're trying to understand it in what it travels. But that also goes for things like electromagnetic waves and all the rest of it traveling within a vacuum. It's the fastest that anything with a given mass or existence or anything like that can travel.
Yeah.
And that's
cool.
that's our
makes sense. And in case someone jumped in on this as their first listen on our podcast, it's not a science, we're not as romantic as Brian Cox in any shape or form. But we just chat, don't we? And then these things
we're curious people, aren't we? I think that's the thing that it comes to with us, that we get, and this is where it came from, is you were asking about thoughts and memories. And this is it, is sometimes you just kind of go, why does that work like that? How does this do that?
everything
that's
else.
hard.
Following on from last week, it was funny actually because this was prior to the podcast going out, so my daughter wouldn't have heard it or anything. But she got in the car yesterday after picking up our middle daughter because I park. She kind of runs out and gets her. And last week we were talking about how parent chat at playgrounds was annoying me. So she got in the car and she went, "God, that's so limp. That's so limp."
She is your daughter.
Yeah, what I stood next to and heard them talking about in Tesco's and that they could get second-hand pens off eBay, and she's like, so, "Your world result," I'm not, wishing to, I just thought that made me laugh. But how's your week been, As? That's how we usually start it. How's your week been?
It is how we usually start it, and the week has been fine. I am tired today, and again, I know I know you hate that word and all the rest of it, but I have a tiredness scale that I use for kind of trying to just. It comes down to.
I nearly said Alzheimer's, but no, you've got.
That's next. That's on the way.
You got.
I'm sure it's the result of what I've got. Yeah, but I've got a tiredness scale that really is just for safety in terms of am I going to get in a car? Am I going to operate heavy machinery? And when I get to this point, it's like I need to just be near something that I can lay down on because I'm going to collapse and fall asleep.
So how many days have you been without sleep now?
It's not even been that many, but the last few days have been very full on. There's work-wise, it's been very full on, and it's been a bit emotional. We had the update from the government, and then we've had grandma and all of this stuff. This is what I wanted to talk to you about is being emotionally tired versus being physically tired, because I think I could be physically tired, as in work physically hard 7 days a week and keep operating, but emotional stuff, if stuff like that, it's heavy enough to hit me, it only takes about 24 hours worth of it, and I start to then get a bit shaky, and that I find that really interesting because it's not actually physically taxing your body. It's not burning calories in the same way, but it seems to make me feel a level of fatigue that exercise or, manual labor doesn't do. You ever experienced that?
Yeah, completely. But I've never really thought about it, actually, to be honest. My brain just went...
Good.
Different types of tired. So what's the science on that then? So is it like is there a physical tiredness as in your body, and then your mind that is different, your spirit that is different?
I think it's to do with I think it's your adrenal system, which is effectively where your hormones are managed. And I think emotional tiredness is normally a result of things like cortisol and adrenaline and all of these hormones related with stress spiking and then coming back down. And I think that system gets fatigued. And that's the feeling that I'm feeling, as opposed to your muscles aching or your joints aching from overworking. I guess that adrenal system is with your brain, so you feel it more in your headspace.
A thing I can draw with that as well is pain. Physical pain to emotional pain, because emotional pain, if you properly had emotional pain, dealing with death and all the things that surround mental health and such, like physical pain can't get anywhere close to emotional pain. So is that the same sort of thing as physical tiredness opposed to emotional tiredness?
Well, that's really interesting, because would you say, since you've been through very, very strong emotional pain, that it's increased your tolerance for physical pain?
I've got complete. I could not. I'm going to, but if I needed to, I could chop my finger off, and it wouldn't bother me at all. Definitely.
But that's mad, is it? Because they're not related in the sense of they're not the same thing. But I guess it's control over the mind then gives you control over the body, right?
Yeah.
Or at least an understanding of it.
Well, you actually said the word emotion, and that I actually had it down to chat with you about this week, and we mentioned about the announcement, like our martial arts industry seemed to put this.
We need a bell, Jay. We mentioned martial arts.
Yeah, a bell.
Like a bell,
I love that.
If it happens.
I love it.
We need a bell. We're going to get a bell.
Yeah, Bell. There was the announcement. Obviously, our sector, the sport sector, wasn't included in basically any of it. Basically, we're just left to carry on as we are. And I've not actually been on Facebook properly since, but I've been, as in to scroll, but I've been on it to post a few things. And you can't help but see straight on your feed. And basically, everyone went apeshit, didn't they? They went, the martial art world, the sport world went like, what about us? And I had a really different emotion to it, if I'm honest. Initially, I was frustrated and I was annoyed, and I think I've carried a bit of stress with it as well. It feels like we're back at the start of lockdown emotionally, if that makes sense. But straight away, I switched logically, and I thought, I kind of, my positive self, I spin it on its head, and I'm like, they turn to the martial artists knowing that we're the strongest mentally, physically to take this on. So we'll make them stay in lockdown because the pub owners and all those alkies, they can't handle it anymore. So I
tell the kids at least.
I span it on its head. But since thinking about it, I've also thought the way that people reacted in connection to our conversation when we had with Jaddy about Black Lives Matter, it's almost like they're talking like martial arts or the sport industry has been persecuted for centuries, the way that they're carrying on. And I thought, like, we need a petition, we need riots and march. And it's like, no, mate, just calm down a little bit. We don't. And I've turned it into logical thinking that if they open, I would like to think, I'm not saying what the government doing right or wrong, they've got a lot to answer for, but if I would like to think they are sitting in a room talking about it, and they've turned around and said, if we open everything at once, we're going to be in lockdown again because it's all going to spike like it is in the world a second time, everything. So let's put these people now, we'll hold those people off, maybe because they can still do what they're doing online, whatever the reason is for. I'm logically thinking it, but is that a safe thing to do or the right thing to do? Should we now stand up and march just because everyone else marches about anything else?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think that, we were talking last week about testing people's loyalty in all of this time, and about like seeing people's true colors. I think that in the modern world, if you really want to see people's true colors, really just mess with their money. Just take their money away from them, or take their opportunity to earn money away from them. And I think a lot of truth comes out of people, at least in terms of where their values lie, because that's where I believe a lot of the frustration is coming from, is because that's what we're effectively being told. Where you can, to a certain extent, make some money, but we're basically being told you need to carry on not doing business and not making money. And I think for a lot of people, and especially in the extended period that it's been, that's what it's building this frustration. It's starting to get a bit nasty, because when you're messing with people's money, you're then messing with people's livelihood and you're messing with their family. It becomes personal. And I think that's where it's now turned a little bit nasty. I don't know if nasty is the word, but that's, like you said, the energy online, if you look at people,
it's very emotional, isn't it?
Yeah, very emotional. And I know they've extended support for self-employed, and there's going to be a second payout and all the rest of it, but I know everyone just wants to get back to work. Everyone wants to get back to business. So I get the frustration, but what is just, there's a difference between moaning about things and taking a proactive approach to sorting it out. I think, we're definitely not just moaning about Black Lives Matter anymore and just saying, oh, boo, people shouldn't kill Black people. There's like we're trying to work towards fixing that. It's just that it's ended up having to get quite aggressive for it to happen because no one was listening. I think that we'll be next because there's nothing else left. So we're gonna get there. But I had it that we were back in September anyway, so this kind of didn't even I brushed this one off because I was just like, look, if we turn in September and they tell us we're not back, then I'm going to start pulling out hair. But up until that
we had
point.
a conversation, didn't we, last week about what plans we're going to put together and dates and that. And it's like, well, let's not bother planning because we've got no idea of dates.
It's all guessing work. Yeah, you don't know. Because
someone posted and they put, oh, this is going to ruin everyone's plans. And it's like, we didn't put any plans together because we presumed this would be the outcome. It's like...
Yeah, I think, there's this hopefulness that people have. And I guess if you're one of those, you're a productive person, you've sat down, you're trying to feel better about the whole situation by planning for the future. So instead of just sitting here and going, I can't work, I've got no money, I'm twiddling my fingers, you start putting a plan together, and then you look at your plan, you go, this is it, the return, the resurrection, here we go. And then government turns around and says, no, you can't do it. And now you feel like your freedom's taken away from you at that point, because you've set out your plans. You're set out your destiny, and your destiny is being affected by something, by Boris Johnson.
But surely you can take that plan if you plan it well and just move it back a week, 2 weeks, a month.
And we just got to adapt.
So things out of your control, don't you?
Yeah, unfortunately we're being tested beyond what we thought we were going to be tested, and I think that's where. Everyone at first was like, we're resilient, we're tough, we're going to get through this. But now it's like we're further into the race. We're into round 4, we're into round 5. And not everyone is conditioned.
I'm loving it. I'm like, wait, I'm going to turn my camper switch, hopefully Friday, and boom, start her up. It was like last week, I almost got to that point, and then I poured petrol over me. The fuel hose split as I was fixing it. And I thought, well, I better fix that properly because that's like a little bit of an issue if that's not right. But I was actually excited because it meant, I've got another day where I can just spend out on the van. It's like, yeah, wicked. Obviously, you want to get back to everything and that, but yeah, I'm embracing
it. I think some people want to get plugged back into the Matrix. You know that scene with the guy?
Yeah.
He's sitting with the agent and he's talking about the
other day. We watched it the other day. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
The chances of that.
The chances of that. I'm not going there today. I think a lot of people, it's like this weird, just moany little baby that just wants, I just want things to go back the way they were before. Grow up. It's not going to happen. The world's moved on. Even when we go back, it's not going to be the same. We're not going back to what we were before anyway. So
do you ever, just changing it all back, we're going back and forth actually, because this made me think, do you ever, does your brain ever hurt when it's trying to do 4, 5 things at once? Like I had it today on the laptop, you can like have multiple desktops up, and I love it. I feel like I'm in Swordfish. You can like swipe across all the different desktops. I got to one, I thought, why am I here? I went back to another one. It was like, I've got to do that, but then I mustn't forget that. And you kind of in that second, like we're only talking about freaking emails and a post on social media, but on that second, you're trying to split your brain to do multiple things. Do you reckon there's an evolution there, or like for instance, right now I've got a couple of things on the tangents we were talking about, and it's like, how do I make that come out of my brain?
Yeah, well, like the science says that we shouldn't multitask because our brain is not effective at switching back and forth between tasks. And the more you do it, as in, let's say you're sitting with your 4 windows, the more you go between those windows, the more you fragment your brain, because it just doesn't know where to put its attention on. So each time you try to switch back to the last task or to the next, there's a bigger fragment in terms of what your thinking process was. So then you end up, I think, with that brain ache where your brain's just like, I don't know what you want from me. But it's also because the beauty of that is if you do stuff enough, isn't it? Or when those bits all start to come together and it all falls into place, and then you feel like the limitless guy where it's all just like, I've got this. Yeah. But I guess that just comes with time, doesn't it? Depending on what you're trying to achieve.
Talking pain, tiredness, sleep. So why do one of the girls asked the other day, one of my girls asked, why do we sleep? And is it still a very much an unknown thing? Because I'd say actually sleeping is a bit of a hobby of mine. I actually really like it and I'm really good at it. I know it seems to be I think presently it's probably stress related, or it maybe always is, but it seems like a lot of people aren't sleeping well at the moment. And I've never had. I had some hypnosis years ago, which helped with all of this anyway. But yeah, where are we with sleep? Because you obviously being a
insomniac.
Insomniac. I've got some knowledge and experience on this.
So I love sleep research. I find it really interesting. Also, because I'm just trying to find a way of getting a good 8 hours. Exactly. Yeah. See, you're sleeping already. But here's my favorite quote about sleep. We have evolved as human beings, and creatures have been evolving on this planet for years and years and years. The one thing that we are showing no signs of evolving out of is our need for sleep. And you would think that we would, because it's the most unproductive, unsafe thing that we could possibly do as a creature on this planet. You're at your most vulnerable when you're asleep. You know, if there was predators, that's when they can get you the easiest. You're not moving, you're in one spot. Your senses are down. You spend a third of your life doing it. And that's if you could actually spend a lot more and be even healthier in terms of the studies have shown that you should be spending more than a third of your life asleep. So it also just seems like a massive waste of time. You can't do anything else whilst you're at it. But we haven't evolved out in the slightest. If anything, as time's gone on, the suggestion has only gone up. We're only saying that we should be sleeping more hours rather than less. So whatever the processes are that are associated with sleep, they're obviously super duper important in terms of how we repair our minds, how our brains and bodies
But we don't really know what it is though, do we?
We don't. We know a lot of the processes, and we know what it does physically in terms of muscle repair. We know a lot of the things that happen whilst we sleep. Certain hormones get released, certain things go around the body that wouldn't when we're awake. But we still don't fully understand. It is still very much a mystery.
Because when you listen,
it's a very important thing.
Yeah, like productive quotes and things like Arnold Schwarzenegger's one about the 6 rules. Like he talks about only sleeping 6 hours a night. Like I can function well for quite long periods of time without much sleep. Not quite to the extreme of you where you can't sleep, but as in I'll just stay up because I'm productive late at night, and then or like running events or something. You've got no choice. If you want to run it well, you've got to stay up late, get up early. I can function well, but I always get that point where I've got to catch up. From a younger age, I would say not it's a dream now, but I like to have like a good 9 hours sleep. I think I just feel I function better off of that. So if I've got a 24-hour day and I sleep for 9 of it, those other 15 hours I think are a lot more productive than if I just slept for 6 of it, kind of thing, on a regular basis. I actually feel a difference in myself, the way I think. Even I notice it with my words. I even notice that I can't say words or think when I get too tired.
Yeah, well, that's what the research shows. 8 to 9 hours is the real recommendation for optimal sleep. And I guess we're just pre-programmed to think that we think about time in terms of our 24-hour day, and you put it in like a pie chart. And when you put 9 hours of that down for sleep and you look at it on a piece of paper, you're just like, but I could go to the gym for an hour, get a workout in. I could read a book for an hour, and I could, prep meals for the week as well as do all my work for the day. But it's not the reality, because like you said, you're not
three-dimensional, that chart, isn't it, really?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's not a pie chart. It's not just this flat thing, because it's your energy also has to be taken into consideration, because time, but it's also what energy you have to put into that time. Because if you're just a zombie, you can have as many hours as you want, but the zombie's not going to get anything done because it's a zombie. You need to be kind of fully functioning human being, and that's the thing. But I guess the economic machine and society doesn't sleep anymore. The stock market opens early and shuts late. There's 24-hour businesses now. Online business is 24/7. You can effectively make money or spend money at any time you want. So it's becoming less and less of something that we do because you can work at any time. You can work at the middle of the night. We're sitting here working at 9:30 at night, when really, our circadian rhythm with the sun setting, we should be going to bed.
Yeah, getting in the cave right now.
Yeah,
it's definitely an interesting subject. I definitely enjoy it, and I'm very good at it. So if anyone wants any sleeping tips, I can give you some.
I can give you some. I just don't know if they work for you.
You're just not very good at them.
I'm just not very good at them. No, it doesn't happen.
I fragmented, or I didn't fragment. So look at this. Like Billy Connolly, I think one of his best traits as a comedian is the way that he can go back to things and finish a joke that he went, oh, yeah, I think that's wicked. I wrote this down the other day. It came up in conversation with my brother, and it kind of ties in with what we said today, because the universe works in this like mysterious universal way. It's not ones and zeros. And I wrote down 1% wealth. Does that mean anything to you if I said 1% wealth?
As in the 1% who hold 98%.
I knew you'd get, like, we're talking just now about people's reaction, and ultimately their reaction to money. And I understand the value of money. It's the cog that turns everything. Like, really, from the moment you're born, you owe, or you need money to sustain. Apart from breathing, everything else costs money, doesn't it? Like clothes, to eating, to everything else, unless you're going real off grid, which I think, if you just take our society and where we live, like even in the rural Sussex or where you are in London, it's a thing that you have to have, isn't it? I get that, and we won't go into personal things. I've been in a position where I've had a good bit of money, but what I've found is I've always wanted with money, always wanted to use it to do stuff. I always want to be doing what I want to be doing. We're currently in a position at the moment where we're focusing to save to get things and everything else, and the current climate and everything. We're no different, I think, to 99% of everyone else out there. You've not got enough money, have you, at the end of the day, for what you want to do. But I think one thing I've seen with this whole lockdown, pandemic and everything, I don't know if it's just an English or British thing as well, but it seems to be really ugly money. It seems to be really dirty, and it seems to bring out not good things in people, and we kind of be better off without it at all. Kind of how I'm feeling.
Yeah, I feel like that on a weekly basis, and then sometimes I think, is this just something that people who don't have a lot of money say to make them feel better that they don't have loads of money? But I feel it all the time.
I haven't been like a millionaire, but I've been comfortable. I've been in a place where I wouldn't have to work for a period of time. But I took that and I put it into where we are now, and basically, lifestyle, without going into it all. And I can say, being in that position where I think it's a good position, and someone did give us some advice on this to get into. It might be Lawrence Nann, actually. So get into a position where your expenditure doesn't, you don't spend more than you're coming. No, but it's simple math, in it, at the end of the day. But it's living that happy medium, which is completely out of balance, I think. With everyone, but I think it's out of balance down to the cost of living. I think we possibly as a generation could be guilty for, the broadband, the car, the watch, all of those things. But like, I don't have the latest telly. We don't have the latest car. We don't have those things. And it just seems, again, I don't know if this is just England as well, but when you do look at America, and I've got a lot of friends in different countries, and I do see, and that it seems like the value of money and what we get out of it isn't the same now. It seemed to be like you could get by on far less a long time ago. Like, you can't really do without broadband now, can you? So that's just another example. We didn't have mobile phones. They didn't have mobile phones. So straight away, there's a couple of things that is something you have to have money for. That, it's just a thought that I've had recently.
No, it is like what we all want. And it's going to be different for everyone else. I think what you're trying to describe is financial freedom. in the sense of, we're trying not to have to wake up every day and think about how we're going to have to make enough money to survive and live the life that we want to live. You want to be able to get up and know that you can do what you want to do for that day and for the next day and for the week and for the months and years ahead without worrying about the money. And that's really what we all want to get to. That's what the 1% have. But I think the difference is, because someone said this to me, because we were talking about, this job and me not earning. I know that from what I do in the way I do it, I'm never going to make millions from it because I've just not got the mentality. And his words to me were, but as money doesn't turn you on. And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, well, for me, and he was just being very personal and honest with it. He's like, money excites me. Like the idea of making 10 grand, 100 grand, it gets me absolutely buzzing. And every time I make a big sum of money, that's me celebrating. Like the same way that we would say, winning a championship or getting a kid to a black belt, whatever it might be, that brings us that feeling. He gets that from cash. And he's completely shameless about it. And I'm sure what you're about to say is you're completely fine with it, each to their own. And that's what it is. But where it becomes frustrating, I guess, is what happens is people who focus on money, your Trumps and all the rest of it, they end up with so much of it. They end up with the vast share.
So what is this 1% then? Because I brought it up. What is it?
As
1%
in,
wealth.
Well, 1% wealth is basically 1% of the world's population holds about 98% of the world's wealth. So if you took all the money and everything that we consider worth something, and you broke it down to all the people who have it, you'll find there's only 1% who are holding and have access to all of this money. And the 99% of us then have all the rest, which is just a mad number. But you can also consider that me and you, we are in about the top 5 to 10% in the world in terms of people holding money. And neither of us are a millionaire. Neither of us are
financially,
You know what I mean? So like there's just a huge gap, which is obviously a huge problem. Or is it a problem is kind of where we get to, because then you're talking about whether or not we want that kind of society or this kind of world. But there's some people who are, and I guess this is where it hits hard, is when you get into a situation now where we're kind of like, we're having to pay attention to money and we don't want to. People can't help but look at your Richard Branson and look at your Donald Trump and go, well, why don't you give some of your money? Why don't you balance out the equation? And they're kind of sitting there, and I guess rightfully so, and going, why should I? Right? This is my money, and it's what you're all right. Why don't you give some of your championships away? Why don't you let some of the other clubs win the tournaments? Why don't you let other people? Why don't you give a black belt to everybody? It's the same thing for them. Money is their thing. So it's like you turn around, and you go, give me some of your money. They're like, yeah, you're all right.
But I'm of no real age. I don't consider myself old and wise, but I do consider I've been around the circle of life, and I do talk to people that have. And a close family member said to us they spent their life, they were they did economy at school. I can't think of the actual subject. They did economics at school as a teacher, and very good with the money in that. And I had the conversation with them in my viewpoint in their later years of life. So they lived to a grand old age. It had no value at the end, as in. They'd saved all their life, they'd paid for everything, and they got to a point where they were giving cash away because they didn't want it to go to the state when it came to an end. And Jobs, Apple man, I don't know how true it was, but I read a thing about him when he was in his dying hours, and he said what he would give everything back, just to have more time with his family. And that's how I'm living my life day to day, at the same time as trying to pay bills and save to be able to move to the next thing that we want and everything else. Am I kidding myself? Is it, or have I got a magic ball to the the end of it all?
I don't know. It's tricky. I guess you have to. I guarantee you couldn't find an account of a person who's on their deathbed, who's laying there with all their money, saying, "Got it.
Yeah.
This is what I wanted. See you later," because it doesn't go with you. And if you're,
but would your deathbed be a lot more comfortable because you had that money?
Garrett, well, yeah, your deathbed would. And maybe your deathbed came a lot later because you could afford the right doctors, or you could afford the right food and the right healthcare and all the rest of it, whereas other people can't. Like, we live in a country with the NHS, so we're kind of, in that sense, a lot luckier than a lot of people who don't have access to free healthcare. But, if you're all privatized like the States, a lot of people, I'm sure, die unnecessarily because they don't have the money. It's so hard, isn't it? Because we also always say that, you're in charge of your own destiny. If you want something, go get something, go work for it, and make it happen. But it's not a fair playing field. Going back to the conversation we have with Jaddy, not everyone is starting from the same point on the line. So to turn around and be like, well, you should have worked harder and earned more money. Maybe they didn't have the same circumstances. Maybe they didn't have the same upbringing, whatever. It just goes around in circles. Money at the end of the day is just an energy, isn't it? It's it's like the ones and zeros of like the world calculator. It's something that we can all understand and fathom. And it's a way of making a transaction. It's a way of saying, well, here's my service or here's my product, and here's you giving me something for that I can then take and buy another service or another product. And that's how the whole world goes round. But it's certainly not evenly distributed. And then in terms of how much it means to you, I guess that's a very personal thing. I'm the same as you. It doesn't carry a lot of weight for me. I wish I didn't have the burden of it. I certainly wish that I could just one day have it land in my lap. And it's not through laziness of not wanting to work for it. It's that I just don't care about it. But so I'd like to have enough that I could just be like, yeah, it's paid for, it's sorted. And again, I wouldn't go out and buy a Lamborghini or anything like that. I'd still drive a pretty normal average car, but I wouldn't have to worry. And I could get on with all the things that I want to do. And I guess it just lets you do more of what you want to do.
Yeah.
Some people want to be selfish. Some people want to give back.
Yeah. I suppose it's like a lot of things we've spoken about is having balance to it all, isn't it? And I actually feel quite tired now, I feel quite sleepy.
We've done 45 minutes. We can wrap it there for this week and pick up next time.
I know we normally finish with like a real motto and everything, but I maybe people are listening to this in their bed and it's now time to
sleepy time.
Sleep it off and breathe out, isn't it?
Exactly that. Well, guys, we will see you next time. Please comment if you're on YouTube. Please like it. If you're on Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review because it helps it reach more people. We'd like to keep this going, so we want to know that you guys are enjoying it and interacting. So if you want us to talk about anything, if you're curious about anything, let us know somewhere so that we can give back to you guys.
Convo about it. Peace out.
Yeah. Peace out, dude.